And now we will take the second part of our issue, which is the franchise fee, 10% franchise fee.
Yes,
thank you, Mr. Schicklin. I know it's been rough. Thank you.
No problem. The next part of the agenda item in front of you is the proposed elimination of the water utility transfer to the general fund. And I'll just give you a brief history on it. The Fullerton Municipal Code has a percentage of the section that you see in front of you. A percentage is established by resolution of the gross revenues from water sales to be transferred to the general fund in lieu of franchise fees and property taxes. That's the way it's set up now. It was established in 1968. The 10% was adopted in 1970, and it's been that way since. Our last rate increase, or rate study, actually was 2004, and at that point, during the rate study, we examined all expenses of the water fund. We examined everything that the water fund was facing as far as paying its dues to everything involved in supplying water. At the time, Prop 218 did not apply to water rates. That's one of the big reasons that you see that water rate study didn't indicate there was a problem with that. So that was 2006 is when the 218 applied to water rates. So that, but just our rate structure was established at that point to 2009. Next, in June of 2010, we were out of our last rate study, and it became time to look at everything again. The council directed us to do a rate study and examine all water expenses at that point. That was June of 2010. We hired a consultant to do a water rate study. That water rate study was completed in July 2011. In the meantime, there was around 9 public meetings. We presented it to Energy Resource Management Committee and the CERC Citizens Committee and the ad hoc. And residents during that time, or representatives from each of those committees, did bring up questions about the transfer. And that was that brought up the issues at that point. But again, back at the July 19th, 2011 meeting, you guys decided to continue that item and examine this in more detail, the transfer to the general fund, and also the 218 notification. We received a letter from the Howard Jarvis Tax Association in November. Joe received that letter. We also received one in February 2012 questioning the legality of that transfer. And then, you know, we were in the same time working on a study that examined that transfer. It was completed in March 2012. We presented that to the Water Ad Hoc Committee on 2 separate meetings. And here was their recommendations. At the April 9th meeting, they recommended that the payment from the water fund to the general fund of the in lieu of franchise fees and property taxes be eliminated. That carried unanimously. Also, they wanted the council to consider an approach of cost of service plan, and that also carried unanimously. That would be establishing what actual costs are encumbered by the general fund to support the water fund. The next steps, the ad hoc, at the last meeting we parted with saying that we would have another meeting and they would continue to study the cost of service approach. We'd bring before them some other alternatives for the general fund, how it supports the water fund and how that would be paid for. We didn't get to the payback options going back 3 years to pay back what was collected. We had several options that presented. They have not got to see nor talk about that. One of them was obviously a rebate to the residents. Another one was an infrastructure credit that would be applied to the water rate increase and help us repair our pipes. There was also something that counteracted the pass-through rates. But anyway, that has not gone before them to discuss as of yet. Also, you guys have not seen the general fund study, the general fund transfer study. We would present that to you guys at the time with an ad hoc recommendation. We'd bring the consultants and let you go through that report in a future date. And at that point, when we got past all of that, we'd get back to repairing our infrastructure and start a reactive or a proactive program rather than the reactive one we're in now to try to address our infrastructure needs and issues. And so that's where we are today.
All right, council members, any questions to Mr. Schickling? Any questions? All right, then we are going to open it up to the public for comment. And if you're going to speak on this and you'd like to line up against that wall, or if you would prefer, do we have any of those tickets?
We have slips, but because we took the public comment in two portions, I'm not sure if they still apply.
Madam Mayor, Greg Seaborn. As far as the 10% in-lieu franchise fee, obviously I've spoken out on it over and over and over again. The nice thing is the water rate study back on May 23rd that was developed by the consultant, by the city staff, identified what the costs are, and it identified 8% of the total cost of operating, maintaining the water system going to administrative services, 2% to other, which included part of your salaries, your benefits, city managers' benefits and salary, Parks and Rec, and I think there's some other things in there. So the study already captures all that. There's no need to go back and review this again and again. Once the franchise fee is rescinded, there's no other costs to recover. The franchise fee was not covering any of those costs because they're already being covered. The only exception might be with the city clerk. Looking at the study, I didn't see any costs associated with the city clerk's office for that effort. So that probably should be looked at. But part of the confusion and the problem was identified through the budget study session that we just had, and as recognizing that employees don't have to enter a time code to show what project they're working on and that it's charged to that account. So it makes it very difficult to track these, which is why I do understand why it would be $200,000 to have an audit. It would be very difficult for that auditor to track down the money transfer. It also calls into question, how do you track the MWD bill that comes and the Orange County Water District bill that comes, and then track how much of that is being captured with ratepayers? I mean, it seems like we're operating really loosely here, and I'm not faulting city staff. I think they're doing the best they can with the tools that they're given. I fault management, whether that's Joe, the city council, or other managers. I'm not sure who yet. I'm sure in time we'll figure that out. But obviously, I'm in favor of rescinding the franchise fee, and don't worry about other costs of service. We already do that, and that's the obvious and proper way to do business. There's another item on here, so I'm assuming that that is not going to be spoken of separately, or will it? Because if it's spoken of separately, I'll refrain from further comment. If it's
We're going to do this in two parts, so go ahead and comment on that right now.
Actually, I already addressed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Tony Package, and I live in Fullerton. Failure to lead. Does this sound familiar to some members of the committee? Council, the 10% water franchise fee is another example of failure to lead. This fee has been going on as long as some members have been on this City Council. If they cared about Fullerton citizens, they would have tackled this issue years ago and requested a proper assessment of cost of service. Yes, I am talking about Mr. Bankhead and Dr. Jones. Mr. McKinley, for once you cannot be blamed for this embarrassment. You were too involved in hiring criminals to our police force. But I digress. Your vote to discontinue the water franchise fee is only the beginning of the questions that need to be addressed. If you discontinue the 10% fee transfer to the general funds, does that mean an automatic 10% reduction in water rates? I don't know. I suggest not, and leave the rates as is and use whatever money is left over after a real assessment of cost of services be used for the pipeline water pipe replacement. Maybe you won't have to have a 6% or even a 2.5 raise in our water rates. 6% and 2.5 is what was in the report. that previously given. The rate increase is already there. After the cost of service assessment, what will happen to the last 3 years of excess fees? I know the ad hoc committee hasn't discussed this, but my suggestion is, and it's about approximately $2.5 million or more in the general fund, again, the logical suggestion is to use these funds for the water pipe replacement and help reduce or eliminate the increased water rates needed to fund the pipe replacement. But where will the $2.5 million owed the water fund come from? Most likely, it will have to come from our reserves. Again, this shows a failure to lead by forcing us to reduce our meager reserves in scary financial times. Unbelievable what happens when people just don't care. Regarding the city manager's offer of doing an internal assessment of cost of service, while he and his staff means well, the reality is until a real impartial audit is done, the citizens of Fullerton will always think that somehow we are being cheated. Spend the money, get an independent audit, and take yourself off the hot seat. Finally, the Municipal and Financial Services report that was submitted to the ad hoc committee. Of most concern to me and to many people in the public is the value and rent they propose for City of Fullerton land used by the Water Commission. The assessors were directed to value the land based on best and highest use, i.e. commercial use. I have visited several of these properties. Many have a water tank or equipment on them. Others are multiple use as parks, and others are barely suitable for commercial or use or housing. Then why value them for best and highest use? Assess their value for what they are, utility space. Will someone please look at this issue and with logical assessment of use? Thank you, and I hope someone is listening or awake.
Are we using the 3 minutes thing? Are we using the light?
It's a regular item.
Hello, Jim Bedisi back again. Quick question. Mentioned that once you sent out the mailers that the public got a chance to vote on yes or no, correct? Is that right? That they wanted a pay increase or not? So if over 50% of the Fullerton residents voted no, what would you do?
You get thirsty.
Would you shut off our water?
And we're not going to start engaging.
I mean, what would you do? I want to know the alternatives there. Again, I was pleading at the beginning, I want an actual cost study. I'm sure you'd have to go back to the city and look at your costs and cut back somewhere, right? So I think that's something everybody has to think about. And I'm willing to go out and get 50% of the residents to vote no. I'll leave it at that.
Madam Mayor and council members, I'm Jim Williams. I'm a 50-year resident of the City of Fullerton. I have property in the City of Fullerton. I'm both a ratepayer in terms of water and also a taxpayer. And much of the debate, and a member of the ad hoc committee, some of the debate has gone to what is the appropriate charge to be made to the water fund for use of city resources and services. And I think it's important to recognize that while ratepayers and taxpayers may both reside in Fullerton and use both services of city services as well as water, they can be distinct as well. So in all fairness, if we are attempting to get the most equitable charge to those persons, taxpayers and ratepayers, then neither should the general fund subsidize the water fund by providing it with resources and services at the expense of taxpayers, a diverse group from ratepayers, and vice versa. Ratepayers perhaps should not be subsidizing the general fund. I know that the 10% was something that was set a long time ago, the franchise fee, And I, as a member of the committee, favored, like the balance of the members of the committee, a cost-basis approach. And I think that would be the best approach to take. But this evening, my primary reason for speaking is I want to remind everyone that we have an obligation to provide adequate, reliable, safe, clean water to our residents, our businesses, industries, institutions, schools, and so forth. So I want to be sure that we don't become overly distracted with which pocket is paying for what, although we want to be reasonable and fair to the point that we can do so without spending so much money in the process, we reduce the benefit of even doing that. So again, I want to speak to the fact that the original charge of our ad hoc committee was to find a way to identify options for financing the replacement of our infrastructure. Our water delivery system is aged, and it is deteriorating, and we know that ultimately the cost to repair streets, from breaking water lines and replacing, in emergency situations, water lines, will be greater than our cost to have a planned approach to address these issues. So I just want to make sure we don't kick the can too far down the road where it's going to cost us even more money, and we address these requirements moving forward. There are those that feel that ratepayers may have been overcharged, and while that might be the case in terms of the way that we handled the approach, the truth is that there hasn't been enough monies, or at least we haven't addressed the issue of replacing our infrastructure. So my focus is a person who has 5 water bills a month, is a ratepayer, and my tenants rely on water, and I rely on water, and we all do. I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that we are having some financing issues that we need to address. We need to get on with our capital improvement projects and not become overly distracted, in my opinion, with the issues of the franchise fee and so forth. But I do endorse a cost-basis approach. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I do have a quick question. I know you're saying you're not going to engage, but it's a yes or no question. Does the city transfer this 10% monthly or annually?
Based on the collection of bills. So that's, in a residential case, that's every 2 months.
So it's bi-monthly, but do you put it into?
And then in the case of commercial industrial, that's monthly. So once once that deposit is made and they've collected it, it transfers to the general fund.
Okay, well, then it violates the ordinance of 1970 that created this franchise fee. Like, it's already in violation from the day it started. And what is it, since a few years ago we found out it was illegal? I mean, this is a terrorist act, you guys. And I've been paying into this general fund. You're messing with my water. This is not funny. I've been paying into that general fund since 1971, and it's violated. It's wrong. And now you guys aren't even, I mean, of course, we're not going to get refunded all the money that's been put into the general fund, and we've got sinkholes all over, but I damn well can guarantee you that sales checked clear, now didn't it? Sellers checked clear, now didn't it? What about our city streets? They're not safe because you guys aren't putting the water, the money that we're putting into our city, into our streets. I live at Euclid and Valencia right there. We had a sinkhole during the last Lakers championship. It was when they were on their three-peats. It was a few years ago. Dude, these people are like 90 years old. You had us out of water for almost a week. I had to go the right half of my clubhouse from Rancho Fullerton. We were out of water for a week. You guys didn't come by to see who it was. That was me with my damn 5-liter bottle going to all of these elders to making sure that they had water. You guys don't care about us. And these people that are in their 90s, they've been paying for the city all this time, and you guys should be respecting them and doing what you can for them. When things like this happen, you need to go to these senior communities and make sure we're okay. It's not up to us. It's up to you. You guys are like terrorists. You guys are messing with these old people. This isn't fair. You've been taking 10% from us since 1970, and you thought it's only been illegal for the last few years. You're in violation. This is wrong. And now you're not even going to give us back the money. Now you're going to charge us rent for city council or for the city buildings and stuff. That's ridiculous. Why are you laughing in our faces? And I do appreciate you not going to charge us in August, because by January I'll be living in another city, thank goodness. And the reason why I'm moving out of the city is because you guys are sickening. I can't take it, but I tell you what, come June or July, there will be a new city council, and I really hope that we do have a new city council that cares about it, and hopefully we'll be able to vote for a city council that's ready to get Joe out of here. Because, Joe, you need to stand up and be a man and do something. You're letting our chief of police laugh in our face, and you're letting our city council laugh in our face. You know damn well that this has been illegal, and you've seen what's going on for the last couple of years when you've been in office, and you know how pissed off we are, but you're not doing anything about it, Joe. Stand up and do something. Take a leadership role, because these guys are jokes. I mean, they're jokes. They're sitting there laughing at us. I mean, they can feel the pressure from us, so maybe we got voted yay on the last little section that we did when it came to the, you know, the increase of those little mailers. But this is not funny, you guys. Messing with people's water, that is not good. You need to make sure that our streets are safe, that these sinkholes aren't going to be coming. Oh, did you see the one in front of Greg's house the other day? Come on, you guys. I can count like 5 to 10 in the last few months. Why? Since if you think about it, I'm not exactly sure on the math, but it's bi-monthly, and that's approximately $135 bi-monthly from every house. Why isn't this? Why aren't our streets safe? Why aren't our pipes doing good? They should be doing damn well good. But you know what? I bet you guys have great benefits. I bet you I'm paying for that damn freaking hearing aid that you're turning down when I'm up here speaking. That's ridiculous. You need to do something about this, please. Either that or we need to set it off until these three are off the panel, because they're shady. He shouldn't be sitting on no damn water board sleeping at these meetings and then being able to make votes on it. That's not fair. And Bacon, I still hold you responsible. Or McKinley, I still hold you responsible, because I think it's ridiculous. You know that the reason why you came here is because you could be with your little buddies, your little chaps that have been helping you the last few years. It is not happening. I am recalling your ass. I don't care what it takes.
Good evening. I'm Pat McNally. I'm chairman of the Water Advisory Ad Hoc Committee. I want to thank you again for involving citizens in this community to work with you to try to come up with a solution for any of the number of issues that we've been dealing with, goes for the last 2 years now. Specifically, the question that I've long championed, that was the original call for our charge of our committee, was to come up with a rate structure whereby we could repair and replace our water lines on a faster rate than we were doing originally. We had a number that was given us in terms of what that rate increase was going to be, and we knew that that was going to be a hard sell. But we also knew that we had a lot of faith in the citizens of Fullerton, that they would stand behind a good decision like that would be investing in our future for their children and their grandchildren here in one of the best communities in California. The other side of the issue, of course, came up along that with that idea of the rate increase, that we didn't want that money going into the franchise fee. And so we said, hey, if you're going to increase money for infrastructure, let's just buy infrastructure and add that process. And we've gone through this before. Brought out a whole number of other questions. We learned a lot about how that franchise fee issue was being funded or being implemented. We learned what the alleged costs that it was paying for. And when I say alleged, I mean, I agree with so many of the other people, and I spoke to this at the Ad Hoc Committee, that a lot of those costs are nebulous. A lot of those costs are not real costs. They're based upon artificial estimates, based upon as if somebody else was running our water company. We're not. The city of Fullerton has been honorably running it since 1906 and doing a darn good job. I would never recommend to this council or to the citizens of this community that we would ever go and have a private water company, which we'd be charged a lot more for our water, and it wouldn't be the best bet because all those people would be running it for a profit. I also wholeheartedly support the idea that at this time in our community, we need to step back from this transfer, the 10%. sooner or later, you're going to also have to look at, or any other future council is going to have to look at, what are the real costs that might be fair to charge or not in relationship to the cost for service for this independent company that we do have, our water company. That's going to be up to you. We're willing to work with you on that as a committee. We haven't had that charge yet. We passed that back to you and said, come up with a solution. That's our second item. So let's look at that. Think about how you want to proceed. We'd be willing to continue to work with you on that. We would continue to work further on some of the issues regarding the future rates that are going to need to be paid for. How are we going to do this payback issue? I'm wholeheartedly in favor of leaving the rates just as they are. I'm not selfish about that. I don't want that 10% from me. I want that 10% to go back to the community, and I want to see our pipes replaced and repaired at a higher rate. And I think, so that's kind of where I stand on that. A lot of people want to see a 10% cut, but that means we don't get some of the things done that we need to get done. I don't like the vitriol that I've heard tonight. I don't like the anger that I've heard tonight. I don't like the accusations. I don't like the swearing. I don't like the attitudes that have been put forth by some of the people that have come to this stand and disrespected the City Council, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with their politics or anything that's happened. It's disrespectful to treat you that way, and I'm going to stand up for decorum, and I'm going to stand up for faith in my community. And politics is a funny thing, but it doesn't mean that we don't have respect for our elected leaders. And I just want to say thank you again for allowing us as a community to work with you. So we'll be glad to continue to work with you. Thank you.
Madam Mayor and council members, my name is Larry Bennett. I'm a longtime resident of Fullerton. I just wanted to come before you tonight and really echo what Pat said. First off, I want to thank the Ad Hoc Water Committee, those individuals that work so diligently to look at our water system, to determine what we needed to do to address the infrastructure running forward. We're a 100-plus-year-old city, and we've got a lot of old water pipes there. I think the franchise fee has been used, unfortunately, as a political instrument against members of this council. I think it's being used in an inappropriate fashion. I, like Pat, do not like the tenor and tone of the speakers who come up and disrespect this council or anyone who disagrees with their position. The one thing that didn't come out tonight in the report that I would hope staff would address, and that is the conversations between the city and our maybe city attorney and city manager and the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. I hugely respect that organization. I think they are out looking out for the taxpayer. I want to know if they've endorsed the cost of service model. If they have, then I too would be in favor of it. If they haven't and we can't find something that's suitable, that's plausible, then like Pat, I would just encourage you to put either immediately or as soon as is practical from this point forward that additional $2.5 million franchise fee back into the water system. I pay a good-sized water bill because I have a lot of grass and a lot of flowers I like to keep looking nice. And I don't want a rate reduction. I don't like paying increased rates. I want our water system fixed. And most importantly, I want the citizens of Fullerton to respect the input that these advisory committees and commissions give to our council. I want them to respect the council. I'm tired of it, and I would actually suggest, as a practice going forward, that public comments be put at the end of the council meeting so we can do actual business, and then they can stay as late as they want and talk as long as they want. Thank you.
Good evening, you guys. In regards to the 10% tax franchise fee, I don't think anyone here, I guess I'm kind of shocked. Mr. McNeely and I actually have one thing in common. We have faith in the city of the citizens of this city, but that's, I think, where it We have no issue with paying 10% if it goes into infrastructure. We really don't. We're pretty well educated here in the city of Fullerton. Most of us have traveled all over. We know how important water is. We've been to other countries. We know how foul water is other places. We know that we could do better with the water that we have. I also respect the fact that our ad hoc committee does do phenomenal work, but when they do work, and I know that they have given you guys a report months ago, and I know that I've been to a few ad hoc committee meetings where they were still waiting upon members of city council to respond, or they needed appropriate members from a different committee, or the members that they were given were not really appropriate. For them even to make an educated guess on, what needs to be done. But I really don't think anyone here in the city does have a problem with paying the 10% if it does go, in fact, to infrastructure. We do have a problem now, speaking as precinct captain of my precinct. I know that the people that I speak to in our community, in my precinct, in my community, they have a problem with paying 10% if it goes anything other than infrastructure. I think that if you guys can somehow figure that if there is a 10%, that it does go directly to infrastructure and not to pensions and things of that nature, I don't think anyone here would have an issue about that.
Good evening. I'm going to say that this is not a political issue. We are here as citizens that find it very interesting that there is a fee that's added on, the 10% fee that's added on to the water that does not go to the water. And this has been going on and on and on. He just said that, oh, we need to add it back in. Well, our systems are already messed up. We have gone out to the sinkholes. We personally have gone out and seen them. This is what we do on a daily basis. We don't just go about our lives and go to work. We actually are at these meetings. I haven't seen you guys there. You thought it was funny when Christine said it was a terrorist act. You attacking our water or taking our water and making it difficult or having sinkhole, that is a terrorist act. Affecting our water, that is a terrorist act. It really is. So we don't understand where this money is going to, why it's going to this. You could have that fee, leave that fee there, fix everything with that fee, but just not have this 10% going into this general fund that's paying for everybody's pensions and raises and bonuses. Seriously? And what I, thought about it when I was at the meetings, because nobody had correct numbers. There were no correct numbers, so I just took it back to my household. With me as a single mom with 3 children, if I don't know exactly how much milk costs when I go to the grocery store, how do I plan for my budget? You know what I'm saying? So if I don't know how much stuff costs, we don't know how much things really cost in this, all the numbers that they were given, how do you know what things really are? I don't understand how you can run a big city like that. I could never run my house like that. We would never make it. So I really, really would like all of you to reconsider what we're saying, because it's not a political thing. We are people that can't afford to have big gardens and just water them just because we feel like having that right now, because it's not the time or the place for anything like that. We are the only ones cutting back. I would love to have a big garden that I could sit out there all day and just water. But instead I'm going to water meetings and sinkholes and everything else, because none of this makes sense. We are not delusional. Christine's not delusional. We are actually at these meetings listening. We are actually at this meeting listening to you and trying to understand this. We really want to know what is going on. So this is an attack. I feel like that it is an attack for the gentleman in the back to say that we have no right to come up here and speak. Are you kidding me? Seriously? So we do spend time there. He can think whatever he wants, because we do go to those meetings and we do put in the time. We put in the time at all these things. And we're actually not getting paid. We're not getting paid to be here. Do you guys get it yet? So we're here on our own time, on our own dime, and taking even more of a pay cut to be here to watch what's going on, because we really care. We really do care about what's going on. So I hope that you guys take that for what it is, and know that we demand respect too, as the people here. I absolutely demand respect for everyone here that comes to these meetings, and we need to start getting it. These are not attacks. We have not cursed. I don't know what he's talking about. No one has used foul language up here. I have not heard it. So that, we need to clear that up. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That will close our public hearing on this, our regular business item. It's not a public hearing. That'll bring us back to the franchise fee. Do we have any questions left for Mr. Schickling? Any questions to our attorney from council or to our city manager? All right.
Mr. Attorney, as I understand, a number of cities have had these franchise fees. And a while back, they were declared unlawful. It took going to the Supreme Court. The first case I understand was Roseville, and they had it, and they were judged that it was fair, it was okay, and then they were retried, and it went to the Supreme Court, and they said no, it was illegal. Am I correct in that?
Let me indicate that in 2006, basically, a case involving Glendale was really the determination that aroused with respect to water franchise fees. And clearly, some cities still have not made that change, and clearly Fullerton is making that change at this point in time, if the vote is tonight.
So, but it was made, the Supreme Court said they were not lawful, is that correct?
The change occurred legally in 2006.
Meaning it was unlawful to have them?
Correct.
Is that what?
Correct.
Am I right? Okay.
What it really said was that with respect to pass-throughs, that with regard to any charges, there had to be a nexus between that which is collected and that which is paid. So that, for example, you simply couldn't say 10%. If you were going to charge a fee, there had to be some nexus between the activity and what you were charging for.
Okay.
And so, in this situation,
so this is why that every city that is in California has not dumped a franchisee that has a franchise fee.
Well,
there are still cities that have franchise fees, is my understanding. I've tried to find out the number, but I don't know the number. I haven't been able to find out the number. I understand Los Angeles got rid of it, and Glendale did. So that's 3 cities I know of that don't have the franchise fee on the water.
Certainly, the city should get rid of the franchise fee. Secondly, I can't speak for other cities. Anecdotally, I've been advised that some cities retain a franchise fee. It doesn't make it right, but that's their opportunity. And again, I don't want to make broad comments, but other than say that even the franchise fee as we structure it, if we can justify the pass-through costs and associate with it, it'd be a more defensible situation.
It needs a name change.
Well, it needs council direction with regard to the mechanism by which you're going to charge or not charge. You're not legally obligated to have a franchise fee. You're not really legally obligated to have a direct pass-through cost. But as you act, you have to act consistent with the California state law.
You have to have this delivery service fee. That's something we have to be able to replace old pipes and that sort of thing. So we have to have something to do that. Right now, we've just voted to vote the cost of the water itself, not the repair of the pipes. Isn't that correct? And we have not said how we're going to fix these darn things that have been in there. So, and several people have said, make it 10%. Well, if you say we cancel the franchise fee, and I support that very much, but we have, because some of that money went to the general fund. Now, I believe that some of the money that went into the general fund was used to repair water pipes. I mean, when something would break, it would be a big, expensive thing. We hit the general fund to get it fixed. Okay? So let's now, because people are upset about this, let's have a fee to pay for the service of the pipes and management of the future of these delivery systems. Now, whether that's 10%, I don't know. Some people say 10% is okay. I've heard 8%. I've heard 6.7%. That's something to be decided. Right now, I'm happy to get rid of the franchise fee because it is causing too many problems, and people don't believe that that is appropriate, and I agree. We shouldn't call it a franchise fee for a city.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jones. Any other comments from council?
Yes. Prop 218 was labeled the Right to Vote on Taxes initiative. And why I refer to this in-lieu franchise fee as being unauthorized is because the way that it's been collected without proper justification as far as cost recapture, transferred to the general fund, not used for water purposes, and it is just a straight 10% surcharge on water. It really resembles a tax. In my opinion, it is a utility tax. And the voters have never had an opportunity to adopt this tax or reject this tax. So since Prop 218 passed, that question has not been put to the voters and ratepayers in the city of Fullerton. That's the real problem here. Now, it was mentioned earlier in this meeting that you get opportunities to do the right thing on occasion. I think Marlena made that comment. The right thing in this case would be to completely strike down this in-lieu franchise fee. Now, some people have expressed that they'd like to keep that money in water for infrastructure purposes. I have that same attitude myself. However, if it's an unauthorized illegal fee, it needs to be struck down in its entirety. Then you begin fresh and anew. If we have deferred maintenance issues in the water utility, that needs to be dealt with straight up. The question needs to be put before voters and ratepayers, and they either choose to adopt that or not. That's what Prop 218 did. Prop 218 made the voters the authority in these matters as far as increases of this sort. I note in the water fund to general fund transfer study, on page 3, it lists current franchise agreements that the city of Fullerton has. Notably, all these franchise agreements are with external entities, private entities. And the reason is that an in-lieu franchise fee was in lieu of property taxes on the one part, and then an attempt to recapture some money that is expended in allowing these vendors, these suppliers, to utilize and somehow degrade or wear down city infrastructure to some extent. Since this has been applied to, this 10% in lieu franchise fee was applied to a city-owned and operated utility, it just really doesn't compute when you look at these other franchisees. And in fact, one thing is especially grating on this list. Golden State Water Company, a private water supplier, which is a private for-profit company, is assessed by this city only a 2% franchise fee. And yet we assess upon our own ratepayers, our own residents in the city, a 10% franchise fee, lacking external costs to justify that. Now, to me, it's a separate matter to examine some of the attempts to justify up to 6 or 7% has been suggested so far by utilizing costs that aren't real costs, not actual costs that have been incurred, but more or less a lost opportunity cost by looking the city as a landlord of a sort to lease to the water utility some of the property and some of the facilities that the water utility utilizes. To me, the right thing to do in this case, and what's been agendized here again, is about halfway there. And what's been agendized is to prevent the transfer to the general fund, but the implication is we go on collecting this unauthorized fee, which is really a utility tax. So I would not be supportive of just merely pulling that back to the water utility. I believe that this in lieu franchise fee needs to be eliminated. And then, consistent with Prop 218, the people in the city do want to support their water utility, put the question before them, and just deal with it straight up. Don't use a backdoor method to try to fund these things. So I may be in an awkward position here of having to oppose something that I certainly support, which is preventing the transfer to the general fund. That is very inappropriate. And someone mentioned this has been going on for a number of years, which is true, and we still don't have the infrastructure to show for that. So the question of whether it's been utilized that way, I think the results are obvious. It hasn't. And then the concerns about earmarking any new approval to infrastructure, I share those concerns. Those could only be met by fashioning some method to put before voters their ability to adopt something that might help fund infrastructure needs going forward. Also, there's one additional problem with what has occurred here, which is the general fund has profited at the expense of ratepayers for a number of years, and now we need to look at some possibility of returning some of that value back. So I've suggested to the city manager that we're in the trough of a recession right now, or at least of an extremely slow recovery. And it would be within the capability of a council, a future council, or any even years down the road, to earmark increases in general revenues for infrastructure purposes, to be able to create a lockbox for a portion of revenue increases going forward. And so I suggest there are many ways still of dealing with that ongoing infrastructure problem. But the first step, to me, it's clear anything less would not be the right thing to do. The right thing to do would be to strike down the in-lieu franchise fee tonight.
Where we began with this conversation more than a few years ago, and on your slide 9, you kind of gave us a history of how this started, and of course 2006 continues to be a date where we had the proposition that came about. Now, when you look at that, some people go from 2006 to 2012. In essence, nothing happened here in the city of Fullerton, and we went about our business and ignored that. Some of that, there are some truth to that, in the sense that we're dealing with this tonight as far as the in-lieu fee. But from 2006 to 2009, we in fact already had a rate presented, and so this did come up in a budget hearing before the water study. It actually came up to, not this last spring in our budget, as we started to really drill down the council in every expenditure, as we were looking in essence for revenue, as we were cutting and closing our Hunt Library, as we were cutting staff positions in the maintenance yard for our Parks and Rec, as we were asking our youth leagues to put in money to do mowing because of the downturn. This was not ignored. This is exactly where it came up, was through our budget hearings, where we in fact did ask the questions almost 2 years ago, is how are we using this fee, and what does it do in the general fund? So with that being said, without getting too far in, when we actually, go down and we look at these expenditures, whether we say it was all directed to water costs, that certainly is something that needs to be rectified. What's broken needs to be fixed, and we need to be accountable to the public, period. And that's why we are here. That is why, in fact, over a year ago, we asked for the Water Ad Hoc Committee. So, some of the information out there the council has just ignored. We've not paid attention. We haven't listened. We've stolen. We've, all of these things. In fact, as I said before, half the people may, in fact, believe that, and their votes come at the ballot box. And that's their right as the public to do that judgment. But we did not start an ad hoc committee over a year ago to do nothing. That ad hoc committee has been very invested in this. There's very, very bright people on that ad hoc committee, and they, in fact, before Mr. Whitaker's remarks tonight, have already asked us to look at the rate pay, have already asked us to go back and look for costs for service. Those things are going to be presented. Some of the continuance did come because of for very specific reasons. Last summer, we were ready to move forward with this, and the items were continued. So there has been many times where the council could have moved full steam ahead and said, we're just going to ignore you. And yet it was continued to get more information, to allow the committee to do some of their work. So I just think that sometimes it's fair to make sure that we're hearing all parts of what's going on. We have diligent ratepayers out there. We have a diligent community who's wanted to be part of this conversation, and they in fact have. They've brought much to the table. This is a very, very bright ad hoc committee. Some of the members are out there tonight. They've stuck through this, but like we said, you know, even tonight you can see us pulling apart, and when we do hear things like, well, you're just doing it because you want some praise. No, we're doing it because part of our job, part of our essential core values as a council is to not make a decision until the item comes to us. This is where we are supposed to make our decisions. And if we are out there talking about what we're going to be doing before and making these statements, then what we're not doing is getting all the information that is presented. And when the public comes to speak to us, that's part of us gathering information. And that's part of our role is to listen. And I think that, you know, this is not going to be the end of this conversation. We have many months to go, and we're taking steps. You saw one step by us even separating the issue tonight. It was presented as one item. We've separated it, and now we're on the second part of it. We'll make a decision shortly, but this conversation will continue to go on because there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do on this issue, and I predict for many years we're going to be dealing with our infrastructure as we should. I, too, agree that we need to stop the 10% franchise fee, that's important. I feel that we also need to make sure that when collected, that needs to go directly to infrastructure, and I support that as well. So I'd like to see if we have a motion from council to move forward on this franchise fee.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I understand what Councilmember Whitaker was saying, but however, I must disagree that we need to stop this evening. I think what we can almost think of this as is an escrow account where that money is there. We'll stop the transfer, but the money will be there, and then at some time in the future, we as a council, after education by the experts, can determine what we want to do with that money, whether it's to repair the infrastructure, which I would be very supportive of, or if we give rebates or however we do this. But I think just to cancel it tonight as a kind of a knee-jerk reaction, I have to disagree with. So with that, I move to adopt resolution number 2012-37, adopting a revised water utility transfer amount to the city general fund, repeal resolution number 5184 in its entirety, and consider a cost of service plan in place of the 10% water utility transfer.
I'll second that.
I'd like to discuss. Okay, we have a motion, a second, and a discussion.
The problem is the name. Yeah, okay, that's one of it. Let me ask the attorney, could the council specify right now until we get everything squared away and know what costs are and what really needed for maintenance, could the council specify the 10% franchise fee goes directly to the water for maintenance? Or is that legal?
Well, I'll make sure that I'm not crossing what the water people are saying. My understanding of what would occur this evening is that the ability to transfer the collection of monies would be eliminated, so there'd be no transfer to the general fund. The 10% franchise fee, that amount of money, would still be collected at this point in time, correct?
That's correct.
And then, while that fund money is being put into the enterprise fund, it would be up to council and staff to determine how those dollars are expended in the future. But at this point in time, based upon this resolution, the money would be collected, but it would then remain in the enterprise fund. It would be up to council and staff to decide again how to expend those extra dollars, which could be everything from a rebate back to the people to a proposed infrastructure program or something else. But there would still be that collection of 10% based on the motion this evening.
When you say enterprise fund, you mean
the water fund.
General. Oh, you mean the 10% would go into the water fund and not the general fund?
10% right now is collected by the water fund. The 10% would not transfer into the general fund. It would remain in the water fund.
It would weigh, and this is what others are saying as well. At least it would give us a way to build out the infrastructure. We can look into if that's the actual cost, 10% or less, and change it if necessary.
Council would retain the right to either rebate that, expend it on infrastructure improvements. But it would be a council determination, and you have the authority to make that determination, and certainly staff could make recommendations to assist you in that.
Okay, I don't recall exactly, but I would move that it goes to to the enterprise fund. Right now,
The motion on the floor has that effect.
it has effect.
Yes.
Okay.
The way the motion now reads is that the in-lieu fee, the 10%, will still be collected and be retained in the water fund, which is the enterprise fund, and there's no transfer into the general fund.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. I have an alternative motion that I move to stop collecting the 10% water fee that goes into the general fund until the ad hoc committee comes back to us with a cost rate and a recommendation to the ratepayers of how we will rectify the payment due.
I would second that. It's a little bit vague in terms of what kind of time frame we'd be looking at there, but I would second it.
I could add by the time,
If in
because
fact
they're
you make
expected
this
to meet very
recommendation,
quickly.
we would have to come back and review the city ordinances and come back with an appropriate resolution, because at this point in time, that's not before you, and the elimination of the water fund is contained in certain ordinances of the city and would require additional action. But you could make that determination this evening. We have to come back and then look at where we are.
Madam Mayor, if I could also add a little bit more for clarification purposes. Sorry, over here. It's getting late, sorry. What you're talking about is a rate decrease, which would require the same mailing that we were just talking about for the water pass-through. So it would be, if you wanted to do that, you would have to direct us to send out a mailing to all of the ratepayers that you're proposing a 10% basically rate decrease, and then we'd have to come back later on and look at what it's going to cost to make changes to the infrastructure.
So we can't do a temporary stop taking this out until we get this recommendation from the ad hoc? Because I thought I spoke to the city manager about that, and that was something we could do.
That is something we could do, and that the recommendation is to cease transferring that to the general fund, put it essentially in escrow, and relieve it with the water fund while the ad hoc committee has time to quantify a cost for service and bring that recommendation to you, and at that point adjust the rate down and reduce the rates accordingly, or use the difference between the two to go directly towards infrastructure or something, or reduce the pass-through rates or other options. They've asked for a little more time to complete that, and then we'll bring that back to you.
If the
okay.
So if the motion you're proposing does go through and it succeeds, and you simply vote to eliminate the water franchise fee, we would have to come back and give you direction on how to accomplish that task.
I see what you're saying. All right, I think that...
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like clarification from the city attorney. It would require a notice of a rate decrease. Is it anticipated there would be great opposition to a rate decrease?
Well, two things. One, I can't imagine there being an opposition to a rate decrease. Secondly, before I give you legal advice sitting up here on the fly, I'd want to research the process. If you give us the direction you want to eliminate the water franchise fee this evening, we will then research and come back to you and put in place the appropriate mechanisms to accomplish that. And again, if it requires a 218 process, I can't imagine the public opposing it, but again, that's a legal process.
I ask because it seems to me that what we're really dealing with here is we've identified a collection, a surcharge, which is not authorized, which leaves us open to litigation. And in fact, if we don't take the action tonight to strike down the in-lieu utility fee in its entirety, we are still open to litigation from Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. That would be my expectation. So in terms of a more rapid way of dealing with this newly identified problem, that our ability to eliminate or reduce that fee to avoid unnecessary litigation, and with the expectation that no one would oppose that rate decrease, however temporary that may prove to be, you know, I guess that's what I want to at least get on the record.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying to you this evening is if the council votes, and their vote is to eliminate the water franchise fee, if you make that direction, what I'm saying to you is we will come back, we will research, and bring back the appropriate mechanisms to have that occur. I also agree with you that as long as the water franchise fee remains on the books at least, there is some level of exposure, though, based upon our conversation with Howard Jarvis taxpayers, they seem to be appreciative of the approach we're taking and understand the mechanism that we're following.
So if we vote out the franchise fee and don't keep it in the enterprise fund, that means God knows when we will come back and say how much we're going to have a tax on the maintenance of the water system, right? And that has to go through the public. And that means November, so we would be losing money on the maintenance of pipes, etc.
They're basically mutually exclusive. With respect to the water franchise fee, the question is, there's really two questions before you this evening. One is, do you want to make a statement by the council, we're eliminating the franchise fee, and desire not to collect it going forward. The second is, do you want to retain the water franchise fee amount, but not transfer it to the general fund? That's the issue before you this evening. Secondly, with respect to going forward, whatever your rate structure may be, if it is to include some sort of component for infrastructure costs or charges, you can do so, and we can have staff prepare that for you, and that would in fact require some sort of a 218 approval process. But that is a different conversation than right now's conversation, which is, do you want to either eliminate the franchise fee and have us research the appropriate mechanism, or at least adopt the resolution, which would have it no longer be able to be transferred to the general fund.
And we have no idea when we would come back with some sort of figure, and so time is money, and the water enterprise may be short of maintenance funds.
Well, the funds, if you adopt this resolution, the funds are still there.
I understand that, but if we
as
take
far
the
as
alternate,
as far as the expenditure goes, that's a combination of perhaps the Water Oversight Committee making recommendations, but certainly staff making recommendations back as to what those dollars are and how they would recommend they be expended.
I would like.
Support
Oh, go ahead.
Pat's motion, because we will have the money in the enterprise. And if for some reason it miraculously becomes too much, we have the authority to rebate it if we wish, without having to go through an election or something like that, or a reduced rates. But if we kill this franchise fee and don't have it come into the enterprise, the water enterprise, then we have no money other than general fund money, which is committed in our budget to fix major maintenance problems in the water system.
Madam Mayor, may I suggest one other option here, which is I certainly favor preventing the transfer of this collected money to the general fund, and I'd very much like to support that if that's all that we have before us this evening. However, if we would agendize then the other half of this for the next opportunity to strike down the in-lieu franchise fee completely, then that would solve my concerns right now, because I would very much like to support the notion of preventing the transfer, but I would like to, at least with what you're proposing, agendize that then for a follow-through action on this.
So you're saying to that, all right, I see. Do you have that as a motion then?
Yes,
so that's almost a third alternative. Okay. So I will withdraw my motion.
Right, and I will make that as a motion.
Okay, make that once again very clear. So
Mayor,
Why don't we do this as a matter of procedure? We have one motion on the floor. The mayor's withdrawn her motion, which is simply to adopt this resolution. Why don't we take action on that, and then after that, ask Mr. Whitaker to consider another motion which would address the second issue.
All right, so I've withdrawn my motion, and then we had the original one on the floor by Mayor Pro Tem McKinley, and second by Councilmember Bankhead. So did you say we're going to go ahead and vote on that one?
Yes.
With one correction, the Mayor Pro Tem in his motion mentioned an escrow capability, and none really exists in this action currently. So.
All right, so then we will be voting on that. So all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
That moves forward 5-0.